Hey everyone, welcome to Techstrong Gang this fine Thursday. I have to apologize. We're probably a minute or two, maybe even 3 minutes late. There seems to be a bad storm out in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Well, it's not your fault, John. You didn't create the storm. I just wondered for an area that's so technologically advanced, why things go to heck.
Can I let you in on a Can I let you in on a secret? So
sure.
when you go to these press conferences often, like Google I/O or what have you, even some Apple conferences, Wi-Fi is terrible at the events.
Yeah,
always.
Silicon Valley
on the cutting edge.
Yeah,
always.
But no. Anyway, we've got a good show to talk about today. As usual, there's a lot going on in the world of AI. There's also some security stuff, and there's just so much going on in the world today. It's hard to just pick out three things. But we've got three topics. We've got a 5-people panel. Let me introduce you to them. As I mentioned before, John is joining us on his phone today, unfortunately, because of the lack of technology out there in Silicon Valley. Joining John, we've got Gina Rosenthal. Gina, it's great to see you. I'm digging that necklace, Gina.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, beautiful.
Oh, no, it's totally plastic. It's just pretty.
Oh, it's pretty. All right.
Beautiful.
And then we've got, speaking of pretty, Anne Ahola Ward, sans Valentine's Day background, but
and
she's here.
I've added a cat, apparently. She's checking.
Yes, and we have your little, yeah, I saw a tail anyway, but yes. And then back home in Seattle for now, our friend Fred Wilmot. Fred, how are you?
Doing great, sir. Doing great.
Good. Well, gang, as I mentioned, it's certainly interesting times with every day seeming to top the day before. Let's jump right into things. We're going to start off with a segment we call the AI Doomsday, or the AI Jobs Doomsday Clock. It's part of an article that I had put up, actually 2 articles I put up on the back on this. But Gina, what do we got here?
Yeah, Shimmy, first of all, I have to say, I always appreciate the posts you write. They have just lots of links and get me going on all of the research. So that's what I did. I spent my morning doing that. And I want to say, first of all, when you kind of look at all the reporting on AI and jobs, there's a bunch of themes that come across. There's studies being done already, lots of headlines, as we know. But the biggest impact so far isn't really mass unemployment. It really seems to be the pressure on the early entry-level work. So generative AI, and that's what we're really talking about when we talk about knowledge workers. The type of AI they're using is generative AI. It's really good at the tasks that juniors used to do for us. Hopefully some of them still do. But, first pass coding, administration stuff, basic research, editing, drafting. And so companies, because AI does a good job with all those things, are starting to hire fewer people at the bottom. But it looks like, according to the research and headlines, that the senior roles are kind of stable, even if they're getting more work dumped upon them. So some articles were framing this as a broken career ladder. Others argue it's not really that the jobs are disappearing, but they're being reinvented or recreated around AI and what AI can do and what now needs to be done. But I gotta tell you, this all feels super, super familiar to me. The first time I saw it happen was in 2002. I was in my job for just 11 months, and we had the .com crash and Y2K, and then that led to outsourcing. And I was let go, not because I did anything bad or I was doing a bad job. I wasn't at all. I had a lot of responsibility, but I just didn't know enough how to contribute where the company needed me to contribute as the budgets tightened. So it's always the entry-level roles that are first to go when all of a sudden companies need immediate value. They can get rid of that line of work. And it's also what's happening with the AI movement. And I saw it happen with my own agency, right? So in 2025, last year, we had a really huge decline in clients. And a lot of it was because they bought into the hype that companies could do some of the roles that agencies were doing. And so that's what happened. So that perception was enough to freeze decisions. And that means I've lived through 2 moments where perception was going faster than reality. And perception is what changed the hiring. So I think the lesson is that we may not be in a doomsday scenario where all jobs or technical jobs or information jobs are going to disappear. But really what needs to happen, and what happened the first time, is that on-ramp to those different agencies disappeared before they figured out what should happen. So maybe they can learn a little, and the doomsday won't be as bad if companies can sit back and say, okay, the real jobs that we need now involve this and that and the other thing. But instead of just deliberately, and instead of getting rid of all the jobs at one time. So I think the doomsday clock is great hyperbole, but I think there's work that needs to be done within organizations, that you are going to need entry-level pipeline to careers. You're going to need entry-level pipeline to your systems. And it might not be the way we were doing things before, but this happened right after the web was formed. It probably happened right after the printing press was released too. We got to figure out what
scribes
what's
out of work.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have to keep on muting myself. Can I mention something? There's this weird dichotomy between what we're seeing as this doomsday phrase, which is used quite often, and now I'm starting to see something called the AI mirage. So there was a study that was just done by an organization that looked at several thousand people across US, UK, Germany, and Australia. And what they were finding, that there was a kind of a status quo in hiring the last 3 years. And there's going to be a delayed impact. So, we talk about these job losses. This organization claims that their AI integration is going to displace 1.75 million jobs across the US, UK, Germany, and Australia. But it's not going to happen until 2028. And until then, there's this, I guess, this perception gap between the C-suite and the cubicle, where, the employees are optimistic. They actually anticipate job creation rather than cuts, though the productivity gains haven't shown up yet. So there's this kind of weird era that we're going through, right, between boom and bust. And it makes for interesting times and really quite anxious times, I think.
Yeah, for sure. It's anxiety driven. But I did like the one blog post about what should you do. I mean, there's things you should do. You should be involved with AI. You should understand how AI impacts your job, and you should be working with it. I mean, I work with it all the time. How can you use it? That's kind of the concern I've had the whole time, is how do entry-level people use it when they don't know what the jobs actually are? So we need to really think about that, and think about how to train people coming into the workforce. Of course, give them free reign to do things with sidebars to keep them safe. But that's where the innovation come from.
Yeah, I agree. We talked about a study not that long ago on this show about basically how AI adoption was much higher among management than it was entry-level workers. So this fits right into that. I think that I don't think the clock is ticking. I think it's struck midnight already for a bunch of types of roles, especially in the creative realm. I don't think the divide is human versus AI. I don't look at it that way at all. I think it's people who use these systems and shape these systems, and the people that are shaped by them. And so the winners are not going to be the replaced workers. They're going to be the workers who can replace themselves and shape the systems, use the systems. We're not crying for the elevator crank operator. We're not crying for the horse and buggy driver. This is part of evolution of humanity. It just feels so fast that it's jarring to people because it is moving fast. But I would say, as an SEO, I love it. It's been way more exciting to do what I do than it ever has since the beginning, because I can make changes. I see the effects in days, whereas it used to be weeks and months. So I think it's exciting, but I'm also a person who surfs on the edge of emerging tech as habit. I chose a profession where I have to learn or I'm ineffective. Not everybody is like that. And so this is going to be a sea change. It is a sea change, but not everybody likes the ocean, right? I mean, that's just the way I see it.
I agree. Here's a couple of things. So the Doomsday Clock article came out of, primarily driven by an interview that the CEO for AI for Microsoft, they have a CEO just for AI over at Microsoft, made that within 18 months, virtually any job that takes place in front of a screen, so meaning on a computer, and I don't know if he means like us talking here on this, Max Headroom, I don't know. But any job that, basically you do in front of a screen, AI will be able to do. But it was more nuanced. He didn't say those jobs are going to go away. He said you'll be able to use AI to do them. And to me, that meant that Andy, your point exactly, those of us who embrace it and learn to leverage it to make ourselves more valuable will be able to do more. And I think that is the key piece of it.
But I think I want to be realistic on the other side, right? To give some balance. And you know that I agree with you because this is what I do. I do the same thing. But I also think that eliminating the junior jobs, especially, and that is a financial decision, without putting in the on-ramp for people to get into an organization is dangerous to the organization because it does overwhelm, and we've seen studies of that, overwhelm the people that are mid and upper level career, more experienced, because they're picking up the slack for the people who would have been there and driven things. So I think that idea of having, okay, what are the new jobs for freshers when they come in and how do they do this? I think that's really important. And there are some companies already trying to figure that. I think it was IBM or Intel had an article this week that's exactly, they're going on a hiring blitz for people just out of college so that they can, with jobs that are specifically designed with working in tandem with AI processes. So I think that perception that everything is gone when we're looking at it. I mean, I'm looking at it from job perspective. It's very difficult to get a job right now in marketing.
Absolutely.
Right. So it's really difficult to get a job. So you think of this perception impacting the hiring, then that means that it impacts jobs, unemployment, families. Not having a job for a year will make you default on your house and all your loans and everything else. So it's like a really huge deal, people moving back in with their parents. So it's a big deal that impacts the economy. And so we have to do more than say, there's this doom today, all the jobs are gone. Let's give hope, not just to learn how to use AI, which we're going to all have to do, just like everybody learned how to do email. But let's give hope. Okay, the thing you wanted to do that you went to college for 4 years, here's how you do it with AI, and here's how you get a job someplace. And those jobs right now don't exist because I don't see the C-suite looking at, well, how do we bring people in to be this, to work with the AI processes to get to our end goals better?
I had a trip to Starbucks earlier this week where the baristas were all listing off which degrees they had.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Which liberal arts degrees they had. And I felt very sad.
My barista used to work at a venture capital firm. She was asking me what I do for a living, and I was mentioning this, and she told me she just shifted over. You know, one of the things that I think the narrative has been taken over by Doomsday is the fact that some of the early adopters or some of the high-profile companies are announcing these just layoffs or changes in job functionality and changes in the workforce. I'm thinking of Amazon and Meta. So that kind of overwhelms the storyline. You know, it doesn't address the vast majority of jobs and professions and industries. So it kind of taints our viewpoints. So we think about, oh my God, it's a massacre.
You know, we live in the tech industry, guys.
Yep.
And tech jobs are the spear of the point of this thing right now, especially, believe it or not, coding, right? The second article that I wrote about Matt Schumer's thing being Matt Schumer's essay, and I encourage everyone to go read Matt Schumer's essay, being a common sense moment here, it's heavy. You got to take it in and you got to think about it. But what Matt is saying is this is someone who's made a living, a career in coding, and the game has changed. The game has changed in coding, and it's not going back. Not to say that we're not going to have people, Matt's going to have a job. Matt's an entrepreneur. Matt's going to have a job. I wrote another article that just came out this morning, I believe on Techstrong IT, about has AI reached its sixth sense moment? If you remember the movie, I See Dead People, right? It was based on a New York Times piece I read yesterday. A guy says, look, on the way from the subway from Manhattan to Brooklyn, on my way home, I upload on my phone all of my notes and tell the AI, tell Claude in this case, to build an application based on it. And basically by the time I get home, the app's done. He said it's not perfect, but it's 95% done. He said what he used to charge maybe $350,000 for, and he'd have to hire 3 full-time developers, a project manager, a team. And he charged $350 to deliver it in 6 months. He now delivers in a matter of weeks with a $200 a month Claude subscription. And while he's doing that, he says, and this is where I got it from, he sees the faces of the developers and project managers he used to hire for these kinds of things and wonders what they're doing. So I didn't want to put, I see dead people, but I see dead roles. I see dead roles. I see dead org charts.
But then what do you see as the replacement? Because there will be a replacement. There'll be a different side.
Yeah, it's going to be a different role, a different job, maybe a different comp formula. But there will everything I'm hearing from my technical friends who code, even friends who haven't coded in years and are now getting sucked back in because they can build anything, they think, right? Really easily, is sometime around November, December, the November release of Claude, followed very closely by the Codex release right then of AI, of ChatGPT, has been game-changing. It went from a toy to really the tool. And it's not going back. It's only getting better, as I think it was in the Schumer article. For him, the moment was when he realized that these AIs are actually now writing their next versions. Yeah. Right? And so that's accelerating this snowball.
So I think there's 2 things here that I think are interesting. So all of us remember the 1900 World's Fair in Paris, right?
Yeah, I think I was there.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw you there. Some salted popcorn, right? The Dynamo was released there, right? And the Dynamo at the time, right? We used to use steam and centralized steam in manufacturing facilities and whatnot else. And, Faraday invented this thing 75 years before that, optimized, through this process of, instead of using the centralized steam-driven ability to run manufacturing in factories, there is an electrical current, DC, right, through this electromotive force that was used to build motors, right, into a decentralized fashion. Right? And this decentralized fashion dramatically reshaped and set the stage for the Industrial Revolution of the time. Between 1890, 1913, 1915, all of that was an adoption period. You had to take out all the old infrastructure. You had to reshape the factory floors, right? Distribution mechanisms, like, vehicles, right? Start to change, all of that stuff. It's going to take, a window of time for all of those things. And we have a very different problem space today. That is not physical from the standpoint of what needs to change. But if you thought about agents and the behavior of this, it's in essence an analog for creating, a digital dynamo that allows us to replace the way that we thought about SaaS or, building software or all of these monolithic, structures to now, people that are not getting a job at Amazon are free to go build something for their community in the neighborhood, right? And it's It's their responsibility. There is no corporate mandate to be good at your job or develop skills. That's your job. And now everyone also has the power to bring that to themselves, right? In this case. And so when you think about that, if we thought about this as maybe a digital dynamo, this is a super empowering moment. No, we don't all know where we're going. That's fine. But it's up to you and yourself and the ability to take what was once a centralized way of building software or, doing SEO work, or all the experts that, charge ridiculous sums of money, right? Software included, right? To build you something that really probably was a premium, now isn't a premium. And so the economy's got to deal with it. Job force has to deal with it. Skill sets have to deal with it. But look, I think there's some amount of really healthy behavior here that leads to the next industrial revolution that we can bring to bear.
I agree. Yeah,
fear
holds us back. Fear holds us back.
I mean, the only thing you have to fear is fear itself. And I think it's a wide open vista, Gina. And I'll end this one here because we're over time. Gina, to your point about the where are the next freshers coming from? By the time they get to us, they're going to be experts, right? Because they're not going to wait for us to teach them. They're going to teach themselves, and they're going to run, and they're going to go in directions we didn't think of, right? And that's okay.
Yes, it's really good.
Yep. Hey, but we got to cycle through here to our next one, and it's great to have those lofty dreams, but right now, last year, let's face it, agents sucked last year. But again, something's happened in the last, this Moltbot OpenClaw thing has really, has this become the defining moment for the agentic era? Has this really made agents real? And again, it goes from, it's just a bunch of humans who are imitating this and animating it, to this could be the end of civilization and everything in between. Fred, what's your take here?
Well, I first of all, I loved your article. The overarching theme of this is, how does this factor into your strategy, rather than sort of like the beaconing of this new intelligence? There's a million opinions on whether or not this is revolutionary or evolutionary, or whether or not things like Claudebot, Open, Moltbook, all of these things become the future of AI. All of that's interesting, but it's not super relevant to actually what's happening. So when we think about the intelligence factor here, we've created, Steinberger created, right, who just got snatched up by OpenAI, mind you, it created a personal assistant, in essence. And that personal assistant doesn't just relegate itself to my chat prompt. It allows the opportunity to access all my communication channels, all my calendars, my email, my everything on my laptop, in essence, and all the ways that I interact in the world. And the conversation around the intelligence of this really stems from a very clever way of utilizing context, of persisting that context with files that can be influenced by users that write some of these text files stored, and a fleet of subagents that can utilize shared memory to perform a bunch of things. That in of itself is really clever, very cool. It's an evolution, not a revolution. There's all kinds of elements that have existed for a long period of time about how we do this. But the kicker behind it is, because now we can emulate some of the behaviors that we normally perform, right? The operational emails of this, and I can choose which models that I want to use, right? So I can appear more or less in this characterization by the persona I set, the models I choose, right? The frequency by which I want to interact with things. But all of that communication feels intelligent, because why? I can respond automatically on Signal or Telegram or WhatsApp or whatever. I can respond an email, right? It feels like someone is creating some intelligent answers that have an impact on how people perceive me or the business or the collective entity. There's a million risks associated with this, right? Shimmy, I thought your article was great. I love the fact that we're having a conversation about this as a one level up, not just the dynamo statement. It is as a digital leader in our world today, how are we thinking about this application to the overall outcome and management of this business, all businesses, and the risk my business is going to pursue? And whether or not you have an AI strategy is not whether or not you've implemented AI, which I also thought was great. And I think the question that I would pose for you guys is, a lot of this is user directed, right? We get, skills building and persistent memory and all this stuff, and we can help influence that. All of us, right, could actively use this effectively today. If we don't have, Claude bands or something else to govern that, the question mark isn't whether or not it's intelligent. It's the question mark is whether or not we're intelligent about using it.
I think that's a great way of framing it, Frank. That is it. Gang, so John, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw a headline yesterday. I think NVIDIA and Meta did yet another deal.
Yes, another. It's hard to keep track. Yes, it's a multi-billion-dollar deal, building out infrastructure ostensibly.
Well, not just building out, it's infrastructure for super intelligence AGI.
We're moving towards super intelligence, the holy grail that Zuckerberg's been talking about after disbanding their super intelligence labs.
Now, depending who you talk to, we may or may never achieve that.
Right.
But my question, and I asked it in this, and there's another twin companion article I wrote on this on Techstrong AI, and I'm going to talk about it on Shimmy Says this afternoon. At some level, is it necessary? Who cares? If my agents could make me more money, and let me be really crass about it. If my agents can make me more money, is that enough?
Yeah, I mean, you put it well in your opinion piece. I mean, it's this idea: are we behind an AI? It kind of misses the whole point. I mean, it's the wrong framing. It's basically, can these systems, through our use, produce measurable business outcomes inside our organization? That's all that really matters in the end. It doesn't matter how smart they are; it's how efficient and productive they are. And I think that's kind of one of the things that always kind of intrigues me, is that we have these constant iterations of new models, talk of super intelligence, talk of attaining this utopia. And it's like, why don't we just worry about being more productive and meeting what the customers want, rather than cycling and overhyping? Like in our previous segment, Silicon Valley has a lot to answer to in terms of overhyping what's happening versus the reality. And they find themselves victims of their own hype, and they have to explain it away now.
But I got another angle on this, Fred. I want to hear your opinion on. I'm going to peel the onion back here and open behind the curtain. Our producer for this show is a young man named Taylor Eubanks, Taylor Uskolka. And not only does he produce the show, but he's responsible for getting the LinkedIn and all of the social media around the show and the announcements and everything that you might see that leads you to come watch Techstrong Gang. And it's a lot of work. And he came to me today about how can we streamline this? And I said, you know what? Let's use OpenClaw. I want you to download OpenClaw. Go ask Chad or Claude or whatever you're using, or what's the best way to use OpenClaw to achieve this, this, and that. He turned white as a ghost. He said, wait a second. Should I get a separate computer to put this on? Maybe I should open a different password manager account and not put any other passwords other than what we're going to need here. I don't know. I'm afraid. I have my stuff in Dropbox. Will it get into my Dropbox? Fred, from a security point of view, and this is the other part of this, right? It's a Security Boulevard article. Moltbox is Moltbook, OpenClaw. People are afraid, or at least may. And should they be afraid? Is fear healthy?
Don't give it root. Never give it root access. Number one.
That's always good advice, Ann. Right there, I learned that the hard way too. But Fred, what do you say?
I think it's understandable fear. I think it is reasonable to. It means we've done our job over the last 25 years for you to be concerned about giving access of everything you have, all that you know, which includes a vast number of accounts and tokens and whatever else, right? Maybe even your crypto, right? Plus all your comms channels. And so does it make sense to be fearful? Sure. But only in the sense that, like, I might not really want to jump out of an airplane, but if I'm trained to do it and I've spent time practicing doing it, I'll do it, right? And it's the coaching through the fear of jumping off is really the more of the risk. And sure, there's a good idea to use different accounts. There's a good idea to maybe not keep all your critical data on this particular access point for this, to clearly define guardrails and boundaries for what you want the tasks to do. And I think for T in this particular case, there's an awful lot of acceleration he can gain from that perspective. And without the pure, everything's going to be hosted, right? And all of my valuable secrets will turn up in a SuperDB on, Moltbook and available for hire, and those types of things. And I think it's a great question to ask because there's a clear need. And by the way, this is exactly what that is meant to do. And even then, right, there's a healthy fear of what are the outcomes in essence, can I go back if it doesn't work, right? Am I starting the doomsday clock right here for me, right? When I go turn this thing on and, it installs on my laptop and whatever your flavor of OS is, and then suddenly it's paying attention to specific things. We're not just, checking me in for my flight. And then I think there's a way to do it. And certainly there's guardrails and boundaries that we know about security already that if we thought about we're giving it to a 5-year-old, we would make better decisions. We can do that. And we shouldn't be terrified about having a 5-year-old. I think that's healthy.
Gina, what about you? Because you're usually cautious about this, right? You have a healthy respect for AI.
Yeah, I'm cautious. And I think this goes back to the hype, right? If we don't really understand how it's doing things, how can you be sure that it's not doing something you don't want it to do? You think about, please look at my entire laptop and make things so easy for me. Is that a great thing to do? In my laptop, I would say no. And some of that is because I have not followed my own advice to lock my own laptop down, and I don't know where it's going to go. I have client, things on my different endpoints. And so from a business perspective, you have to look even further.
Gina, as a lawyer, I'm going to advise you to stop right there and do this.
No, exactly. Right. So, but I think that's part of the reason for caution is, especially if we look at, you're talking about somebody that understands where all the different data is going. That's why he's asking you the question. What is this really a good idea? Which was the right thing to do. But what happens when people don't know, if they have bought into the hype that we hear and they just let everything fly in the wind and hang out and see what happens? That's not a good way to go either. So I think there has to be, and as much as I heard this early on, maybe a year or two ago, that you can't, I think I'm a huge proponent for digital education and digital literacy. So if the things have changed so fast about how digital applications and things work, there absolutely is a need to layer on just, these are the basics you need to know about. If you go out and build an app and go all into AI, which you totally should try, here are the things you're going to want as your guardrails. So I do think we've done a really good job teaching people security over the past 25 years. I think about all of the security training we've all had to take, and how has that really been effective, or is that a good thing or a bad thing? But it's definitely going to make people think twice. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? So I think there needs to be somebody to come out on the normalizing things. This is a good thing if you take care of things, if you take care of your privacy, if you've done all the things we've told you about for 25 years, so long way around it. I think we have to be worried about security, especially, when we started this whole thing out. I read a really interesting Reddit thread when I was looking into some of your articles, and you think about the models that have been built by the different companies and how they originated. They went to the deepest, darkest depths of the internet, which are horrible, really scary places to initially build these models. So that's why we have the kind of caution about what's actually happening here, and is it a good or a bad thing?
All right, we could talk about this one a lot, but we've got to jump to our next one. Our third segment today is the Supreme Court selects software to shield against ethics conflicts. John, my first thought was, is it going to shield us from seeing their ethics conflicts? Or is there something that you were going to put on private airplanes that said, wait a second, Supreme Court justices can't
I knew
fly
you were
on
going to go
for
down
free.
this path.
But,
I
but go ahead.
Coming a mile away.
Tell us about it.
Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna upset you. Sorry, Alan, but I'm gonna upset
It's
you.
okay.
So better late than never, I guess, right? So the Supreme Court says they're going to use this software to help their justices find potential conflicts of interest to modernize their, how would I say, murky ethics protocols. So interestingly enough, the Supreme Court is about 20 years late. Lower federal judges have used conflict check software since 2007. And I think ProPublica has a lot to do with this decision, maybe out of shame or maybe out of a threatened investigations, because we've got this long history in the last couple of years of this particular justice, Associate Justice Thomas, and luxury travel that was unreported, relationships with wealthy donors, giveaways, things of that nature. So it's in a sense, they finally had to reach it. It'll be interesting how they implement it and whether it would lead to anything of any substance. But Mike, who's not here, pointed this out to me, and I was shocked how late they were to the party. But then again, I probably shouldn't be, and I'll leave it at that.
Would they check what their spouses are doing too? That might be conflict.
Oh, I'm sure they may. Well, I'm not gonna presume, but I would hope so. I hope so. I don't know for a fact, but I think they would.
Don't they have to do the ethics training like all of us do?
Yeah.
When they start the job.
Evidently not. No. They seem to run by different rules than the rest of us, and I'm trying to be diplomatic about this. There's a conflicts of interest that have been gone on for years. I mean, I even think I'm going to date myself. How about this, Alan? Abe Fortas.
Sure.
He left. I mean, there were consequences for him in the 60s.
Well, I was going to say that in those days. This is similar to I had a conversation. Given today's political climate, you really think Richard Nixon would have resigned?
Hell no.
It's a different world. We seem more willing to put up with less than from our public officials. But here's no one ever accused me of being diplomatic. So let me put it to you bluntly, because it needs to be said. Do you really think these justices are doing the things they're doing because they don't realize the ethics of it, or they just don't give a crap?
The latter.
So you can have the greatest software in the world. Is it going to help you?
Algorithmic governance is better than nothing, which is, I would argue, is where we are now. I think it just paints a broader picture to me that no one knows how to legislate AI, and it's going to be slow, it's going to be punitive, and there's going to be a lot of things breaking before laws are put into place. I mean, I always point it out because it just baffled me how much we've struggled with it with Section 230.
Yeah.
Right. How much did we nail it with that? And this lawsuit we talked about recently on this show with that young woman, it is putting it through its paces more than any legislator has.
Yes, Zuckerberg testified yesterday. Interestingly enough, he testified yesterday at the same time that news came out that Meta's working on a $65 million super PAC donation to influence both parties over AI regulation ahead of the midterms or just in general. So there's going to be you talk about companies spending money on infrastructure. Now they're going to start spending even more money on lobbying, and you're starting to see Anthropic just did this a couple of days ago. OpenAI has already started, but Meta's looking at both parties. They're trying to influence them from every angle.
Right, but the positive here is the fact that we're aware of this. We know this. We can discuss this. It adds some light to it, right? And so I really firmly believe that the wicked flee when none pursueth. And I would argue. Yeah, and when AI in terms of legislation, whatever, these tools can be used to combat what it is that we're in fear of, right? So, the battle's not lost. It's just being fought. I just think, at least there's some awareness here that something needs to change with the Supreme Court, because the faith in them is waning publicly. But I would argue the way that I categorize where we are now as a society is we are in a low trust society.
Yeah.
We could see the same press conference, we could see the same interview, and none of us can trust what was said. That's a new thing. That's a relatively new thing, that we're at this level.
Absolutely. Just quickly, I was out this weekend with some folks, and on that note, Ann, it's not just the news conference we see. None of us believe or don't know what to believe on our social media feeds, on our, what we're getting in our email boxes, in all of our, antenna that we receive and send information via, whatever the medium. It's all subject to, is this real? Right? Between the fake videos and the fake news and the misinformation and the bombardment of it from a million different places, no one can look at anything anymore and say, okay, oh yeah, that's the fact.
I would argue with you, that's a good thing, because many of us for a long time have looked at information that has come out from the major news sources and have not believed the information that they were giving. So I think part of that is good. And I wish that more people would, everything that they look at, that they would question it, and that they would go back to the primary source to see what was actually said and done.
If they can.
There are more sources now than ever too, right, Gina? I mean, before we used to have just a limited number of sources that we trusted, and think about Watergate and Vietnam and how we were gullible enough. And it's good to have healthy skepticism. And I think there's so many news outlets. I mentioned ProPublica, among others, that are doing work that, unfortunately, I don't think some of the traditional media, many of them will do anymore, or can do. They don't have the resources.
Well, many of them are owned by big donors, not mentioning CBS or anything. But Fred, what do you got?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the challenge that we have here is actually inverse, in the sense that if what we're dealing with here is a complete lack of trust in the institutions we've established, that is the rule of law. So when we think about whether or not it's relatable to what the latest trending spin is from X, Y, or Z, if you discount all of it, right, then you're uninformed. If you believe any of it, then you're going to be polarized. And the challenge isn't whether or not that happens. That is the problem we have today, is how do you judiciously develop your own opinions? Historically, we had access to information, not spin. And now, right, it is sort of a discourse, and everything is op-ed, and it may not even be, human-driven op-ed. So my worry is more along the lines of, no one's going to have a good sense of what is right, what is real. And to your point, Shimmy, like, what is reality here in this situation? Maybe people turn off like the Truman Show. Maybe people become so engulfed in this that we're no longer able to make up our own decisions about it.
And that's been a conscious decision. I mean, the whole idea of flooding the zone with shit, that's what it's about, to have so much information out there. Some real maybe, but a lot of it just manufactured and rage bait, that we're overwhelmed with data and we're not sure what's information and what's just crap.
That's what I spoke about last week, the enshittification of the internet, as Cory Doctorow's book is about. This is the problem. Anyway, I'll tell you another problem is we're out of time. So I got to end this one. I'm glad we made it through without Mike Vizard.
Missing Mike.
The man in the high castle's off doing something. But Gina, John, and Fred, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for watching. Hey, a quick heads up, in about 90 minutes, I'll be doing my Shimmy Says. I'm going to talk more about this. Is AI smart enough without being intelligent? It'll be a good one. Check that out. We'll be back tomorrow with more Techstrong Gang to end the week on a beautiful Friday. But until then, this is Alan Shimel. Thanks for watching, everyone. We're out. Bye.